Hello and welcome back to Film Exaggeration. Well, I said I would get to it eventually. Last year I covered Atlas Shrugged Part 1, based on the first third of Ayn Rand's 1,000-page book, and it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. The acting was lifeless, the direction had no style, it was padded to shit, and had some of the most fucked up morals I've ever seen. I wanted to punch that movie in the face, and I'm not the only one, as it got panned by critics, all over. Although Kyle Smith of the New York Post seemed to like it, saying it contains a fire and a fury. Yep, the guy who gave negative reviews to Infinity War, A Quiet Place, and The Last Jedi thinks you're not that bad. You're an insult to Kyles everywhere. Well, despite bombing horribly, like seriously, it didn't even make back a quarter of its budget, they went ahead with the sequel, getting the money they needed from a private debt sale. Because if there's one thing Ayn Rand would like, it's people given money to make a project that no one wants. Paul Johansson is not back as the director of this film, which I've never heard of one of these book-to-multiple film adaptations doing that. Directing this time is John Putch, who mostly works in TV and direct-to-video movies. Brian Patrick O'Toole is back as co-screenwriter though. The movie managed to make even less than the first, but of course that didn't stop them, and the reception was even worse. If you need a reminder about the first movie, two of the biggest spoiled brats on the planet built a new railway system, then found the prototype for a new motor that was never completed due to the company going out of business since they paid their workers too much. And then their friend Wyatt burned his oil fields and ran away, claiming he was on strike. So let's see how the rest of the story goes. Sometime in the future, wasn't the first film set in like 2016 and 17, which would make it the past now? So it reminds us that railroads have become the most common form of transportation and then shows us some badly CGI planes. The pilot of one of them is... wait. Dagny? That's not Dagny. Dagny in the first film was played by Taylor Schilling from Orange is the New Black. Which I totally knew at the time. Well, is Reardon played by the same actor? No? If you knew you were going to be making multiple movies, why wouldn't you have your actors sign on for multiple films? This would be like if in The Hobbit, they replaced Martin Freeman in Desolation of Smaug with Kit Harington. Oh, whatever. She's chasing some other plane. It's not very good. I mean, I don't think her face changes expression once. But I'll give them credit for at least trying to add some action. I didn't know we were in the Bermuda Triangle. She's about to crash, but we smash cut to the opening title and then go to 9 months earlier. They're discussing the motor and how it can change the world, but again, this company went out of business.
Who holds the patent?
None was ever filed.
You could file for it.
I don't want to claim credit for something I didn't create. I just want it to work.
Oh, how nice of you. You still thought of making your workers going on possibly dangerous train until the union stopped you. Piss off. So there's apparently some component missing for the motor to work properly, but because so many of the scientists have been disappearing, they may never find out what it is.
I could take the device to the State Science Institute. There are still some resources.
Nope, can't send it to a government office. I mean, I know I said it, just wanted it to work, but not letting any government officials touch this thing. Outside, Occupy Wall Street is happening, and you know, for a country on the verge of economic collapse, they all seem pretty well fed, washed, and clothed.
While the fair share law dictates that companies must supply goods equally to all customers, businesses continue to close their doors due to a shortage of raw materials.
Look, we were just saying that the baker not making a gay wedding cake was because he was a bigot, not because he was cheap. Dagny meets up with a guy named Eddie as we see that Wyatt's fields are still burning.
You know why it's still burning. Because anyone bright enough to put it out is gone too.
Firefighters are a public service paid for by taxpayers. Why would they go on strike? Because the government tried to regulate them? We then get this poetic moment of Dagny looking sadly at, once again, the most well-off homeless people ever put to film.
Since Ellis Wyatt disappeared.
Stockton Coal was making up the tonnage for a while, but we lost that contract.
And we won't get it back. Andrew Stockton hasn't been heard from in weeks. The government took over the plant under fair share and hasn't produced a lump of coal.
Yeah, and whose fault is that? If the guy didn't leave, then the government wouldn't have taken over the plant. So because the coal is in short supply, they have to kill one of their trains. We then get this.
Henry Reardon is a hero. He's an innovator. He's a job creator. It's better. It's cheaper metal. It's more creative. This is capitalism 101. And the fair share law, more big government, it's going to result in failure. It's going to result in a lack of competition.
No, but you want more people in the marketplace, and especially when you see the price of gas, when you see the price of goods.
Oh my god, I don't care. If I wanted to watch a roundtable discussion on economics, I would. We then are reintroduced to Hank, and I'm just gonna keep calling him Hank because Reardon is a fucking stupid name, and he's having government interference of his own.
I've just never met a looter with your kind of dedication and endurance.
I'm not a looter.
No? So you're not here to take something from me you didn't earn yourself?
You know what, Hank? Why don't you go out there and make some of that steel yourself, okay? Then I might actually feel sorry for you when the government makes you pay taxes. Hank refuses to sell steel to the State Science Institute despite it being against the fair share law.
Tell them I won't accept payment. Now they're welcome to come down here with their trucks and their guns and seize as much metal as they want.
That would be theft.
Actually, dude, I think they would throw you in jail because you would be breaking the law. Dagny's brother James, who seemed to age up about 20 years, has to sign off on killing the train. He takes a store clerk named Cheryl to see a pianist, but that pianist disappears right after the performance, leaving a note saying who is John Galt. Oh yeah, because there's so many pianists in the 1%. Dagny goes to check on the motor, which is being worked on by Quentin Daniels. He says he can get it working, but at a price.
If I need gear or equipment, I'll send you a request. But if I pull it off and make it work, I'm going to want to skin you alive. A painful percentage, if that's acceptable.
That was a scary thing you just said. Why would you say it like that? And why does your voice sound familiar?
That whole State Science Institute, it's like a state institute minus the science.
All right, kiddies, stand back. This area is cooking with supernatural activity.
Hank sells metal to a coal miner despite it going against the fair share law, and then talks to his wife Lillian, played by Carrie? Oh god, Kim Rhodes, what are you doing in this?
James Taggart's wedding is this evening, remember?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that.
Wait, he's getting married? To who? Cheryl? The clerk he just met a week ago? Oh, by the way, that's Alex Mack. I've never seen that show, but I guess some of you will have to go and cry knowing she was in this.
You know, money cannot buy happiness.
Fuck you. Francisco, remember him? Doesn't matter, starts trying to argue the meaning of money and then tells Hank that there were some explosions at his copper mine, or at least there will be. Hank then spends the night with Dagny. Again, why am I supposed to like a character who cheats on his wife? Well, Lillian eventually figures it out and Hank agrees to a divorce, but it's actually Lillian who declines, wanting to keep up her appearance. Oh my god, I'm suddenly missing Rosalind. We then see those explosions that Francisco warned us about. Well, the mine may be destroyed, but After Effects' future looks bright. Hank is charged because he sold more metal to Daninger, meaning they could go to prison for a decade. But Daninger decides to go on strike, which, yes, means he's disappeared. You know, with all these people leaving, why don't the fucking workers just take over the businesses? There's a major meltdown at Hank's mill with some of the worst effects I've seen in a theatrical movie, and he stops it, proving he won't be leaving anytime soon. There's still an hour of this movie left. Daniels is very close to getting the motor running, but really needs the guy who created the prototype. At Frank's trial, he tries to defend himself, even though, really there's no defense. He broke the law. You could say it's a stupid law, and it kind of is, but it's a law.
If you believe you may seize my property simply because you need it, well then so does any burglar.
No, they were going to pay you for it, you just didn't want to sell them any because you wanted to be petty.
If you sentence me to jail, send armed men to get me. I will not volunteer to go.
Alright, and then he was put in jail for 10 years. The end.
Mr. Reardon, you wouldn't want it misunderstood that you work for nothing but your own profit.
Indeed, I want it understood clearly. I do not recognize the good of others as a justification for my existence. If their fair share demands that I get nothing for my labors, that it requires me to be a victim, then I say, public good be damned, I'll have no part of it.
Why am I watching this? Why am I watching a movie starring the villain of every other movie ever made, except it doesn't seem to realize it?
And how does that benefit your fellow man?
I do not owe you an answer, but I could tell you in 100 ways. Thousands of jobs, billions in revenue, fueling our economy despite your efforts to destroy the very foundation of our existence.
So not selling stuff is going to make the economy stronger. You're an idiot. You are a stupid, stupid human being. This has to be one of the worst scenes ever put to film. They won't jail him because they don't want to make him a martyr. Pretty sure you have to die to become a martyr, but okay.
Do you realize what you've done?
Dodged a bullet.
You've given the people a voice.
I refuse to give up my money and materials in order to make the world a better place. Actually, that might be speaking for the people nowadays. What the hell is Michael Gross doing in this movie? Well, he's here to dismantle the John Galt line. You know, for all both sides talk about how much they want to help the poor, why have none of them had any significant roles in these movies? The government then enacts Directive 10289, meaning no one can quit or be fired from their current job, business owners can't retire, quit, sell, or transfer, all patents are now owned by the government, no new inventions are to be made, all companies must produce the same amount of goods within the same year, all citizens must spend the same amount of money within the same year, and all salaries and prices are frozen to their current rate. What the fuck is your end goal here? I mean, do you want to lose in the next election? Do you want to start a revolution? Do you want to die? These have got to be the stupidest, most one-dimensional villains I've seen in a long time. And last month I watched a movie with these two in it.
Oh, how amazing are we to be the only girls in this obnoxious school who can get tickets? I know, that is so sad.
So after ruining business and causing many more people to become homeless, I have to wonder why they don't just declare themselves a dictatorship already. Hank refuses to give up his patents, but they blackmail him with pictures of him and Dagny.
I don't imagine you'll suffer much, since your wife already knows. Of course, can't say the same for Miss Taggart.
Why? She's not married. Hank gives in, Dagny quits, and then Hank tries his damnedest to get a divorce. A train collision happens. You know, in the first movie I was begging for something to happen, and now I just want nothing to happen so the movie will end. Also, this looks terrible, and I don't think a head-on collision between one stop train and one stopping train would cause an explosion that big. So this pressures Dagny to come back. Meaning her leaving was completely pointless. Dagny tries to prove that the railway is safe, which wasn't that a major part of the first movie. Why are we doing this again? But the engine fails and some guy has to come and repair it. And it turns out that he used to work for the plant that created the motor.
What happened there?
Well, Mr. Starnes passed and his heirs took over. And the idea was that everybody would work to the best of his ability, but be paid according to his needs. That's when John Galt stood up and said he'd have no part of it. The best workers had to work harder, and the needy got needier. Worker turned against worker.
Then why weren't they fired? Here's a compromise. We'll pay you what you need in order to survive, but if you don't work, then you're fired. Galt apparently said he will stop the motor of the world, which my only guess means he was mad he wasn't making more than those he thought weren't working hard enough, and so decided to screw over everybody. Daniels makes a breakthrough, but he's quitting due to being approached by John Galt. Dagny buys an airplane, and this is what leads to the events we saw at the beginning. But now we see that she flew through some kind of cloaking device, and her horribly animated plane crash lands in some hidden valley. Not that hidden valley. Of course she survived that. Why wouldn't she? She is found by someone who introduces himself.
Who are you?
I am John Galt.
Yes and no. No, in that it is better than the first movie, the direction actually has some style, the actors are actually trying, the music is better and at least had some energy to it. And yes, in that it's still terrible. It's still long and boring, the villains are so one-dimensional to the point of stupidity, the characters are all awful, and the morals I still find to be reprehensible. Hank is one of the worst main characters I have ever seen. There is not one thing I like about him. So yeah, it's still a terrible movie, one of the worst of the decade, but given the choice, I would still say it's slightly better than the first one. But there's still one to go. But we'll get to that next year. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Oh no! We're going to crash into that mountain! Nah, that's just a decoy. It's a cloaking device. There it is! Santa's village! Oh no! We're going to crash into Santa's village! Yeah, that's a pickle.